Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff, and welcome to the 1:72 scale de Havilland Mosquito build. Okay, we are at step 100, believe it or not, which is the Bombay doors, if you're doing the open version, as I guess most people probably would, I would think. And then we have these little parts that go in, so 17, which was that one, as part 3. So let's just pair them up just in case there is some form of difference that I can't spot. Okay, so that's sprue C done. We've got some spare ordnance that we can take off for future projects. So I'm going to do that now. Then I have a little box in the attic for 172 spares, and I have got one for 148 and 1350 and so on. So we'll plop those in there, and we've always got those. So if we do an older kit and it might not have ordnance, or the ordnance is not very good, we've always got something we can swap it out with. Now, this is one area that I omitted to paint cockpit green when we were spray painting before, so these will have to be painted up in 2 stages because we've got to do the inside. Everything else that's cockpit green has already been done. Right, drop tanks. We have one on sprue E and one on sprue F. So I'm just going to remove those, and that essentially is those sprues finished. So we've got the closed landing gear doors, and we've got this alternative air scoop which has some form of grille on each side, but effectively we don't need any of that for our build, so that can all be recycled. I'm just going to take the connection points off. Don't think there's anything getting in the way of fit, though I might be wrong. Just do a test fit. Oh, see, that's lovely. That's lovely. No, there's a little bit of wiggle, so you can misalign them, but actually you'd have to put some effort in. So we're going to glue that as it is. Well, that's nice and easy, isn't it? And then we can just use over it with the flexi file and job done. So we do have to test fit with the holes, which just for a laugh we'll do now. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Engineering on this kit is sublime. Okay, I'll get the other drop tank done and then I'm back with you. Okay, our last part is this part 12 on sprue G, which plops into the tail. Just fell off. So let's just test fit that. Doesn't appear to be a way to put it in. Actually, if you look at it closely, one end is wider than the other, so there is a right way around. Make sure that's flat. Yeah, that goes in lovely, so glue that in. So this is the last step in the instructions, which is step 112, believe it or not. It's a huge number of steps for a 172 scale model. It's not even a full-size 4-engine bomber. Right, we also have, I've missed it somewhere, and I'm not sure where. What step was that in? Let's just have a quick look. There's that part there, which is part 16 on the G sprue. Right, which is step 86, which I seem to have skimmed right past. So we need to do that. So this is the blanking piece for the wing. So I'm guessing on another version there is some form of wing light mounted in there that we're not using in this variant, which again means we've got more variants to come, which is good. Let's just check which way around that goes in. That way. And that's us finished with the G sprue as well. So that's the last of our blue-grey plastic parts done. So we've just got the clear parts left to work with. So that's our final parts in sub-assemblies, ready for final paint and final assembly. So far this kit has gone together beautifully. A little bit of thought needed around some of the build related to how you're going to paint it, particularly with the engine nacelles, but everyone has a slightly different way of going about it, and a lot of people would build this up and just paint it. It's just not the way I work. So happy with how this has come together so far. So the only thing outstanding is getting some of these clear parts sorted, which we will do once we've got this lot painted. Just masking this off before we paint it using some, well, kitchen sponge. May well have to put a bit of masking tape into this as well. The sponge is a really efficient and quick way of masking these sort of areas. we're just going to add a small amount of mascol to these wing lights, and that should ensure that we can easily clean up the glass. So I'm just dabbing it on with the cocktail stick. It dries relatively clear, so don't worry if you think you've not put enough on, you probably have. I like to have enough to grab with my tweezers, but there you go, that's all it needs. Right, time to put some paint down on the Mosquito. We're doing paint scheme B, which is this one with the black undercarriage and wings and what have you, which I think looks really quite nice. I got something for red and black planes. I don't know what that is, but I do get drawn to them. But we're going to put this grey down first, which is matte ocean grey, which is Humbrol 106. I have some of it here. I don't think I've used this one before. It doesn't appear to be mixing particularly well in the bottle. We can see there's some grey and there's green, and I've been shaking it for some time, so we might have to go in and further agitate this, I think, before we go any further. But generally, not always, but generally I go with lighter colours first. So we can put this down, then we'll probably do the camouflage, and I'm thinking of possibly just freehand spraying the camouflage this time, rather than getting stuck in with lots of masking and what have you. And then we'll do the black last, where we will have to do some masking off and tidy it up, but it'll be the least amount of masking in fairness, so that's the plan. We don't need huge amounts, so I'm going to just put a small amount in at a time, just in directly into the brush without using the paint cup. It means that I've got just a few drops in at any one time, and also I don't have a paint cup to wash. I do have a smaller paint cup, but I find it a bit difficult to get in and clean it. Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's gone down really well. I'm just going to blow some air on it and force dry some bits. So I've got various things that we need to paint black. Can't do anything with the wings and the fuselage because that's still drying. But we can do the engine nacelles, these gear doors. I haven't primed the Bombay doors yet, so I can't do those in the black, but we can do the propellers. But before we do the propellers, the propeller and the spinner are both black. I need to put the yellow down for the tips. So my way of working is I put the yellow, spray the yellow down, then mask that off, and then spray the paint down, and that generally works for me, rather than trying to put the yellow on top of the black. It's not preferable. So I've got here trainer yellow, which is Humbrol 24. So we'll let that dry for a sec. We should be able to come back to the first prop now, which is already looking dry, which is what I expected. And we can put a second coat down and just make that look a little heavier in terms of colour saturation. Right, our grey that we've put down first is now fully dry. In fact, it's been overnight since the paint went down, and it has dried very nicely. So the next task is to put the camouflage colour on, which on the instructions looks brown, but actually the paint colour they're calling out is matte dark green, which is very green in reality. So we're going to need to thin that up and get that ready, and I'm going to try and hand brush with the airbrush, but do it freehand rather than mask it all off. And there's various different methods you can use. You can put blue tack rolls down and stuff like that, but I'm going to see if we can do it by hand. So with that in mind, I am going to swap my needle out. I've got my 0.4 in, and I want to drop that to a 0.2. It's easy to know on this brand of airbrush what your needle is, because they put these little lumps on the end, so we know we've got 4 lumps that we're on a 0.4 needle. Right, we're up and running. It's great putting paint in a dropper bottle if it's airbrush ready, but if it's just not airbrush ready, it makes life very, very difficult. I have nothing but contempt for these bottles. It's a silly idea. Or it's not a silly idea, but they haven't delivered it well. It's a classic case of continuous change rather than continuous improvement. Right, I will put the paint cup on this time. Okay, so I like, in a situation like this, just to do a little bit of a practice paint. So what I want to do is just do a couple of controlled thin lines. There, that's working okay. No paint is being delivered okay. So let's get going. So that's our top camouflage done. I'm quite happy, given that I've done it freehand. I'm quite happy with that. So we'll just let that all dry off nicely, and then we will get ready for masking for the black. Right, our paint is dry, and I'm quite pleased with how my freehand camouflage pattern has come out. It's really quite good. Now, I've not varnished any of this yet, so it's still unprotected in that way. But the next thing that we want to be doing is applying the black, and before we can do that, there's some masking to be done on the main aircraft here, and there's also the drop tanks that I need to just finish cleaning up, and then I'd actually like to mount them in place, I think, before on the wings, before we do any black painting. And I've got a couple of things left to prime, yeah, not much left to do really. Once we've got these bits done, we're then onto decals and any weathering that we might do, and we've also got our pilot to finish. So the next step with him is to paint in his face, and then we've got boots, hats and goggles. So when we do the black on here, we can do his boots and goggles. Face will be the next job for him though, I think. And the ordnance, we've just got 2 of these to put into place, and they still need the other end priming. So it's increasingly sort of little bits and pieces that are outstanding, but we will next, I think we will tackle these drop tanks, and then we can get some masking done. First off, it's basically the connection nubs. There's no other tidy up needed. There is a very small lip on this tank, but I don't know whether that was the kit or me. I'm going to guess more likely to be me, because the fit on this model has been absolutely exemplary. It's been really, really good. Okay, those drop tanks look good to me. So let's get them onto our wings. Now, I'm not sure if they were specifically handed. If they were, I have lost that in the process of building them. Okay, now I'm getting a slight gap. I'm wondering if that is the length of these pins here. So I'm just going to trim them a bit shorter. It's always a bit of a process of elimination with this sort of thing. Yeah, that's going in better. So I think the pin at the back where the wing is a bit thinner was just a tad long. Okay, we can get that glued on now nonetheless. Right, time to get some masking done. And as you can see, I tend to reuse my masking tape as much as I possibly can. So what I do on these cutting guides, these cutting mats that I've got, I tend to put them on the back of there. It's a great way of keeping them flat and keeping them out of the way at the same time. So then I can revisit them when I need to. We've got a number of different masking tasks to do. Some of them are a little bit more tricky than others. So we're going to start, I think, with the propellers. The principle is easy. It can be a little bit tricky. First thing we need to do is decide on what we want as a thickness. And when you look at the instructions, the paint instructions, although it's the very tips, it's sort of from the start of the curve. So when I look at that, the start of the curve is bigger than you think. There's probably a couple of millimeters there at the widest point. So yeah, you're at about 2 millimeters. So I have some tape here that's cut to 1 millimeter. So we'll probably use that in 2 layers, and that makes it easy because we can put the first one on the very tip and then the next one underneath it, and we know that we've got the same depth on all of them. So we've got 12 lots of that to cut out. So just going to clear a little bit of space, some arm room for me. Okay, so that is our tip done. That's about right. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So we'll do the back. Obviously, you noticed I only cut enough to do one propeller. I'll do one blade, and I'll do the rest of it off camera. Now, some people might be thinking, why don't you just fold it over? The reason why I'm not folding it over is because when you fold it over, you start getting creases and it immediately makes it crooked, and you can't get an accurate line unless you go along and cut them all, and then you might damage the plastic surface. Okay, that's going to take a bit of time, so I'll come back to you when that is done. Right, masking the fuselage now, and actually the camouflage is a fairly narrow strip on the top of the fuselage, and everything else is then black. And we've also got the tailplanes there to do. So I'm going to start with the tailplanes because that should be nice and easy. Okay, so our masking is done, and I think we are pretty much ready to get rolling. So I'm going to use Humbrol 33, which is what's suggested in the kit instructions. Just taken delivery of it, so we might as well use it. So we're going to put that down and see how we get on with that. Okay, our spray painting is done, and given that I did that freehand, I'm rather happy with it. None of this has been varnished as yet. My next stage is to get some more assembly done, and then we can do some varnishing, and then my favourite bit, decals. I do love decals. So let's get cracking with a bit more assembly. So first thing I want to do is get this gear sorted. So I don't think it really makes much difference which wheels we use. What I did do is get all this painted up and weathered beforehand, and I can't remember whether I've test fitted this or not, to be honest. The instructions show you just popping these in. There we go, like so. Which means we have to find the flat spot. There we go, I think that's it there. It's actually easier to find the flat spot from looking sideways. We'll correct that when we mount it and place the aircraft. but there's my flat spot. If I keep that towards the bottom, that just clicks into place like that. Happy with that. So that's our gear built up, which effectively is step 31 covered off. Right, my next task is the engine nacelles, and if you remember, we wanted, rather than to glue these in and then just paint the tips and the roots of these be black, we wanted to paint the whole thing so it would look better when done, and we did test fit it to make sure everything would fit. So as long as we get the right one in the right place, we should be okay. The arrows on the back certainly help. There we go. The top of this should stick proud of your actual engine nacelle. When you look at the instructions, it shows that also. There we go. So I think that looks much better than trying to paint them individually afterwards. Definitely much better. So let's get some glue on that while I'm holding it in. Let capillary action do its thing. And whilst we're just letting that dry, just checking I've got that in correctly, but I believe I have. I'm just going to pop out the mask, which again is a little easier because we've not put the nacelle onto the wing. We can just pop it out from the inside, which means, there you go, we've got no black paint into that at all. A little bit of touch up needed around the back of the air intake, but that's nothing. And that's why we've not done any varnishing yet, because we want to do any touch up before we varnish. They are a brilliant idea. Absolutely love it. Great innovation. Hope we see more of that. I think they've done it on the 148 Buccaneer, but it's the same designer, so not a surprise. But yeah, that looks fabulous. Happy with that. Right, with the exhausts in, we can now fit this to the wing. I've got a little bit of painting to do, which we're going to do with the brush, the vent in there. But what I need is for Airfix to have stepped up with the fit, and they absolutely have. Yeah, that looks lovely. There's a little bit of touch up where I've not quite got the spray in the opening there, I can see, and there's a slight mismatch between my masking and the engine nacelle. Again, it's tiny details, just a little bit of touch up. We'll sort that. So we need to get that glued on, and we'll apply our glue actually to the engine, which means we can put some glue on the exhaust tops there, which will just help with bonding them in. There we go. Happy with that. No glue fingerprints. All good. So I've ended up putting a couple of pegs on. I don't really need one at this end. It's a bit belt and braces, to be honest. It looked like it was sitting okay. But here we just had a slight opening where you can see, just putting one of these rubber tipped pegs on, closes that up, so that should dry nicely. So we can put that to one side, wait for that to dry off, and do our other wing. We also have the inside of the bomb bay that we can now build up. There are some parts that are orientated and some parts that appear not to be. I've also got to make a decision on where I'm placing my my bombs, because the bombs sit on these little tabs that stick up, so where you can see there's a little location hole for them, and they attach on like so. So if you're not showing all of the bombs, and I'm intending not to, you'll need to cut that off and smooth it out. So I need to think about that, but in the meantime I can get to grips with these racks in the first instance. There's a square peg and a round peg underneath each one. One's got a round peg, one's got a square peg, I should say, which helps you locate them in the right place. Now I've already placed these parts on my mat in the right order, front to back, so I know roughly what I'm doing. And we're just going to put some glue on the ends. The pins actually don't locate into a hole or anything. They've been done that way to sort of ensure that you put the right part in at the right place. There you go, first one in. Okay, that's our racks in. They look really quite nice. Then we've got these arms which swing out the bomb bay doors. Now the instructions have told me to paint these green, but they look like there's some form of pneumatic involved, which should probably be silver in colour, so I might well be painting those bits silver. So that mounts on a little pin on the inside here. Now the reason that I've decided to only put half the ordnance in, and the reason that I am doing one in one corner and one in the opposite, is I want to see some of the detail in the bomb bay. We've put so much effort into making sure it all looks right, it'd be a shame to then not see it. So we can see that we'll have a bomb in that corner and that corner, which will allow us to look in, see some of the tank behind it, see some of the detail that we've given a wash, and that should look, well, should look the part. You can see we've got a bit of touch up to do in some places, but it's minor stuff that'll take 2 secs, and we'll do that before we do any varnishing. I am keen to get a varnish on this though. So I'm going to let that dry before we put the ordnance on. We've got to paint the ordnance and put decals on anyway, so that's the bomb bay done for now. I've decided that these hydraulic rams need to have a metallised shaft, so I'm using MIG's steel, which is such a lovely paint. Brushes so nicely, and we're just going to pick out what appears to be the hydraulic part. So I've got a 10x0 brush that I've actually cut the bristles down to slightly less than half. It's ideal for this sort of stuff. Right, going to get our wings on our Mosquito now. I have fitted these several times, so I know the fit is good, and I'm just going to apply glue on the wing root and nothing else, and we're just going to put it actually on the forward end of the wing roots. The wing roots locate the wing really nicely, and it means that I can, well, these beams I should say, not roots, but it does mean that I won't have any glue between the wing and the fuselage, which is exactly how I want it. No risk of any issues that way. Careful. Right, that's gone on really nicely. The masking tape managed to take off a little bit on this forward edge, so I've got a little bit of touch up to do on the grey, and then when we've done that we're ready for finally putting the gloss on, and I'll feel like I can relax then when we've got the gloss on, ready for the decals, because right now I'm feeling a bit nervous about scratching the paint. There we go, and for the first time it looks like a mosquito. There we go, and that's looking good underneath. Yeah, really happy with that. So we'll let that dry, and then we can do some touch up and get this varnish on. That is the touch up done. Right then, we're at the fun part. I'll turn that the right way around. This is one of my favourite parts of any build. It's doing the decals. So all the decals are on the single sheet. We don't have a separate sheet for stencils. So what we'll do is we'll work through them, probably doing one surface at a time, and then move our way across the page, crossing them off as we go. I'm not going to film all of this. We'll put a couple on, and then I'll crack on and show you what it looks like when it's done. But for now, before I put my music on and get into the real therapeutic session of putting decals on, we'll do one or two with you watching. Okay, let's crack on with that. So if you have watched my channel before, you pretty much know the way this runs. I like to have a decal on the go, a decal in the water soaking, and the next couple of decals cut out ready to go. So I sort of have this system, and when it comes to the instructions, I'll do one surface first, work through it, and then so on. Now I place my decals with tweezers. Yeah, that's ready to go. So the most important thing is making sure we've got this in the right place. So it's going roughly there, and right, just touches that top corner. There's a little, always try and find something to orientate to. So this top corner of this square here just touches the roundel. So there we go. That is about right. So I'm going to put a little bit of microset on my brush, which will soften the bristles, and we can use that then just to squeegee out the air. Well, I have nearly got these decals to behave. They are, most of them are down and settled and looking good. I've got a little bit of silvering left in these, tiny amount, which I'm going to look at in a sec. And I've got a little bit of air bubbles on here. We've got a little line that runs down the fuselage, and I managed to trap a little bit of air under there, so I'm just going to gently break a line in and just help these settle. So under the D, there we go, and that should help that settle. So a little bit, just a touch now of microsol. And we're just going to run it in where we've cut, and that should solve our remaining problem. And everything is now looking good under there. So we are ready for matte varnishing with that. So whilst this lot is drying, I am going to have a look at the canopies. We've got the pilot to finish, we've got the ordnance to paint, so let's crack on with that.